Hello, college football fans. Welcome to episode 181 of College Football Throwdown. I'm your co-host, Alex Schmitz, and today I'm joined as always by my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Hello, Husker fans and college football fans.
Hello, everybody. This week is a bye week for our Nebraska Cornhuskers, so we will not be talking about them as much as usual. We'll save that for the end of the podcast where we give our official predictions for this upcoming Indiana game. Instead, this week we'll be focusing on what happened in the national world of college football, and thankfully it turned out to be a action-packed week, just like the week before. A lot of big upsets, a lot of close games going on overtime, so it was pretty fun.
Yeah, well, but the difference is 2 weeks ago the schedule wasn't necessarily an eye popper, and it became one because of the upsets that happened. Last week was filled with games of anticipation, games that we knew or believed would be good games, and many of them delivered on that expectation.
Yes, that is true. That is a definite difference. So before we dive into all that, we're going to stick with our tradition and open up a cold beverage. I've got my Golden Road Mango Cart here today.
Oh, and I've got a different beer. I've got I need to turn on a light, I guess, to read it. Santa Fe Brewing Company, which was established back in 1988, which sounds like a long time ago, but it's not, because that was the year I graduated from college, so it can't be that long ago. It's the Pepe Loco Mexican style lager. Pepe Loco Mexican style lager beer. It's a very popular beer, of course, in the Santa Fe area, and I was turned on to it by our friend Wesley Nelson.
Nice. Well, cheers. You might have to read the label better next time, though.
Yeah. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, no problem. So yes, starting off the week 7 of college football, we did give a couple predictions last week for the big games. And we'll start off with the Red River Shootout, the big rivalry game between Texas and Oklahoma. We both predicted that Texas would win. I thought it'd be a little closer, 38-21, while you predicted a bigger win for Texas, 45-17. But it ended up even more lopsided than either of us were thinking, of 34-3. Now, that score obviously looks bad, but it was actually only 7-3 with 2 minutes and 30 seconds left to go in the second quarter, with Oklahoma being up. And then those last 2 minutes and 30 seconds was like a disaster for Oklahoma. They let Texas score. Then I think they turned the ball over and they scored again. So the score quickly climbed up there right before halftime. But up to that point, they had done a solid job of slowing them down.
Well, yeah, I would say that Oklahoma's defense had hung in there, but Oklahoma's offense seemed inept from the very get-go.
Right. No, that's definitely true. Well, and this was also Quinn Ewers' first game back after recovering from his injury, and I think he was a little bit off his game, a little sloppy at the start, but he kind of got things together as the game went on, and obviously kind of cruised to a Texas victory. Though both teams did miss a field goal, it is worth noting.
I would say this is one of the more lopsided recent Oklahoma Texas games that I've watched, though.
After that point in the second quarter where things really went Texas's way, it was never really in question after that. And I'm sure for the Texas fans who have, kind of been dominated by Oklahoma in the rivalry for quite some time, it must feel good to kind of be back on top.
Yeah, they're enjoying this trend, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yep. And then the other really big game that we gave a prediction for was Ohio State versus Oregon. We both predicted that Ohio State would win. I thought it'd be a little bit bigger score of 42-24, whereas you predicted a closer game, 38-31, going Ohio State's way. But it ended up being a 1-point victory for Oregon of 32-31 over Ohio State. I watched most of that game in its entirety live, and was really back and forth, good, exciting game. And Ohio State had a chance to potentially kick a field goal at the end, but made some crucial mistakes in terms of managing the clock at the end in a boneheaded play by their
Yes.
quarterback that cost them that chance.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is, and the irony is I had said to a friend who I was texting with through the day, I was like, man, this looks like it's going to go down to whoever gets the ball last. And I thought I was going to be proven right. But yeah, there were well, see, they didn't understand that a clock rule, or at least they weren't prepared for it as a team. I don't know if the coaches didn't understand it, but that clock, basically being restarted when they didn't expect it, really affected them. They let some precious seconds go off the clock, and then of course the quarterback on that final play, didn't realize that he didn't have the time. I think he thought he had more time than he really had, and so he wasn't fully cognizant of how much time was left on the clock.
Right. And the thing that caused the clock to run earlier was a penalty that I forget exactly what it was, but it happened like inbounds. And so then when the ref kind of restarted the clock with his whistle, the clock started going. And the coach definitely did not realize it because he was like talking to the ref on the sidelines, like afterwards, like why was it rolling?
Right. And the answer, like you said, but the thing is it was 12 men on the field, and
Right.
the other team, Oregon, did that on purpose. They did that specifically for that reason. They knew they were going to get the penalty. They were willing to give up the 5 yards in exchange for the time.
Well, that's not quite right because there was a penalty where there was about 30 seconds left on the clock, and there was a penalty, and then the clock wound down quite a bit there, and then they stopped it, and that's where the guy was getting confused, Ryan Day, and then there was 10 seconds
Okay.
left, and the play got
Yes.
stopped, like you said, because there was 12 men on the field, and that gave them 5 yards forward, but it cost them 4 seconds, which in that sort of
You're
situation,
right.
that turned out to be crucial.
Yes. Exactly. I think that's what I took from it is, man, that is a strategy that I think you're going to see again. Now that you kind of understand the concept, I can put a 12th guy out on the field on defense if I'm trying to defend. If I'm more concerned about time running off the clock than I am, I'll put a 12th man out there and let bygones be bygones with the result of the play, and then the time that's run off the clock will be gone.
Well,
And
sure,
I bet you they're going to address that in the off season in terms of how they interpret that rule.
but if that final play had gone differently, say the quarterback finds a quick pass to the sideline, right, that gets him forward another 7 yards or whatever, with and with 1 second left on the clock, right, and then Ryan Day calls his final timeout. Now, between that short pass and the 5 yards, you push them forward from the penalty. They're probably, within range of a long field goal or whatever. And your little strategic bet backfired in your face, right? It's just that this time it did work out.
Yeah, no, you're right, but it's interesting, and we're going to get to this later in the podcast, Alex. But um, it's decisions like that. It's the addition of the 2-minute warning. Coach Rule went through that today on his press conference and just really enlightened the sports broadcasters or sports journalists and myself to some of the key things that are different because of that 2-minute warning, which I found fascinating.
Mm. Yeah, no, and it's an addition I don't mind. Like everyone knows it's coming. It matches the NFL,
Well, right.
and because of the some of the changes they made to the first down rules, right, and having the clock run during first downs when they didn't used to, and things like that. I think adding in another moment for time to stop is a good thing, even if it gives us another commercial break or whatever.
Right. I'm with you, and I just didn't realize the implication. Like he said since they've been dealing with it in the NFL for a long time, was one of the things he had to learn when he became a head coach was all the strategy behind what you do in advance of the 2 minute warning, and how you handle your timeouts, and how what are the kinds of things that you do, and the different philosophies. So it was pretty insightful. So if people didn't have a chance to listen to Coach Rule's press conference today, it was a great press conference.
Interesting. And then we didn't predict this one, but we did highlight it as a big game, which was Penn State versus USC. Penn State was the fourth ranked team in the country, so they were considered to be the favorite. But USC actually was up on them for the majority of the game. Penn State threw two interceptions and was down, and then had a miraculous, drive in the fourth quarter to score seven to tie the game, where they had two fourth and longs that they converted on to keep that drive alive. And then USC's field goal kicker, who had made field goals earlier in the game, of course, missed in overtime, which gave Penn State the pretty easy kick to win the game.
Right, right. That was a wild game for sure. And like you say, you sensed that USC was about to take control. That they just couldn't quite send the knockout blow, and then you could tell that Penn State, after like you say, a sluggish start. And again, I kind of attribute some of this to this West Coast travel, right? Flying from Pennsylvania to LA. It doesn't matter how long you've been there and how many days you've had to adjust. It's just a very different environment.
Right. The final score of that game ended up being 33-30 in the first overtime. So, USC, that would have really, because they've had some upset losses of their own this year, so that would have been kind of a statement win to kind of put some more positive momentum on their season, but they couldn't quite make it happen.
Right, right, and like I say, that puts some question marks, right? They've got a few losses now. They've got some good wins, but they've got a few losses, maybe more than they were expecting. And now, going forward, they have to ask themselves what's next. And we are going to have the pleasure of going out there and playing them in a few weeks. And depending on what happens over the next few weeks for us, that could either be one of those blowout, athlete dominant victories for them, or it could be a game that we have a chance to win.
True. That's true.
It depends on what we do in these upcoming days.
Yes. I mean, if Minnesota can beat them, we can beat them, right?
Yes. Well, but Minnesota beat them at home.
True.
And we're going to have to go out and do it out there. But again, I think I might have mentioned this before. Depending on what happens to them between now and that game, and what happens to us, if we come into that game with 6+ wins and some optimism about how our season's going, and the fact that we're going to be going to a bowl game and things like that, we're feeling good about ourselves. And USC maybe loses one more game before that one, I could see the energy in that stadium being deflated, and us being able to go in there and maybe take advantage of that. Now, all those circumstances could be reversed, and we'll go out there and get our ass kicked. So just to wait and see.
Yeah. Now, this was quite a crazy one that maybe people weren't expecting. Alabama coming off of that close win over Georgia, and then the upset to Vanderbilt the week after, and then they had to go play South Carolina, and they didn't play their best. They threw two interceptions and ended up winning narrowly 27-25. But South Carolina, actually, they scored a touchdown late in the fourth. They went for two to tie it and didn't get it. And then they went ahead and kicked an onside kick and got it with 40 seconds left, but just weren't able to convert from there, unfortunately. They also had, I think, after one of those Alabama interceptions, then they followed up with their own fumble that really took some momentum out of their sails. I think if they hadn't had that fumble, they very well would have won.
I would agree. And man, that onside kick was something else. I don't know if you watched that or not, but I thought Kim and I, your mom and I, were just talking about onside kicks and how often statistically they're successful, and that it's surprising that more coaches don't try them more often. But particularly when the other team is fully expecting it, I think that ratio is a little worse, right? A little less than the surprise onside kick. But
Right.
that was impressive the way that happened.
Well, you're reminding me, I don't remember which game it was. It was it the Oregon or Ohio State game where it didn't look like an onside kick because they kicked it like right at a dude, but it bounced off him and then they
Right.
got the ball. Which game was that?
No, that wasn't Oregon. I don't think that was Oregon or Ohio State. That was something. That was another game. But
Okay.
uh, but it's just really good to see. I thought that might have been that. Wasn't that the Alabama game?
Maybe it was. I think it was that Alabama South Carolina game where they went for it, went for the onside kick, and it was obvious they were going for it because there were only 40 seconds left, and it still worked out. Like it about kind of went slow, and an Alabama guy kind of touched it accidentally, and then they were able to dive on it. But this was a weirder one in the other game. But that's my faulty memory for you.
You're getting old, man.
Uh oh. And then Tennessee, Florida ended up being an exciting game. Tennessee going in ranked number 8th and ended up winning in overtime 23-17. Florida had some critical mistakes, frankly, where they probably should have won that game. They had a fumble at the goal line when they were close to scoring. They had 12 men on the field at the end of the half when they were going to kick a field goal, and they didn't have any timeouts, so it forced time to run off the clock, and they didn't get to even attempt that field goal as a result. And their quarterback got hurt, and they missed a field goal in overtime. So, yeah, it was just kind of a comedy of errors for Florida that kind of let Tennessee sneak out a win even when they didn't play their best.
And that's Tennessee's a head scratcher to me because I thought they would be better in a more a complete football team than they have been. I mean, they're lost to Arkansas, and then this game, even though it ended up being a W for them, they're not as good as I thought they were going to be at this point. The talent is there, it seems like, but it seems like it's a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Nebraska's not the only team that struggles with details.
No, definitely not. And then another big matchup in the SEC was Ole Miss versus LSU, number 9 versus number 13. Ole Miss
Right.
ended up losing that one in overtime to LSU, 29-26. Ole Miss had a missed field goal as well as 2 interceptions. So yeah, they definitely had some of their own issues. But then that field goal kicker who missed a really makeable field goal, I want to say it was like 32 yards earlier in the game, then he drilled a 57-yarder in overtime, only for them to then just let LSU
Wow.
score a touchdown right after.
That's interesting. Well, and again, that game, Old Miss was a team that came into the season with maybe some higher expectations, some maturity. They thought this was going to be a year they would push, and they're going to be good but not great again.
Right. Well, and they're definitely getting some heat nationally in terms of the kind of fake injury thing. It's something that has been going on widely in college football, but they're getting particularly kind of scrutinized for it because apparently I want to say there was a stat that they had 20 some, injuries that stopped the game, in the past 3 games or something like that. So when it's happening that often, you start to get suspicious.
Right. Yep, that's right.
So yeah, some big shakeups, both in the Big Ten and the SEC. And then in the Big 12, there was a big game, Kansas State versus Colorado. Kansas State ended up winning that one 31-28 over Colorado. So Colorado finally has another loss.
Yeah, that's true, which is probably not good for us. But again, I don't care. I don't think our strength of schedule things and things that matter. That doesn't matter. I mean, at this point, just how many W's do we get is the only thing that matters. And win-loss records of your opponents and all that kind of crap to be doing the whole, transitive property of athletics doesn't work. And so, I just as soon watch Colorado lose,
Right,
no matter
right.
what. And I actually thought they had come back and taken the lead and were going to win it. And then I fell asleep and then found out the next morning that K-State had come back and won.
Well, there you go. So yeah, Kansas State holds on for that one. And this was kind of an unexpectedly crazy game in the Big Ten. Purdue versus Illinois. Illinois rather, going in as the favorite. They were ranked 23rd in the AP poll. And they ended up winning that game in overtime, 50-49. How's that for a Big Ten score for you?
Oh, yeah, I know. Especially Illinois, right? With their defense. I didn't watch that game at all. I didn't watch highlights or anything. That's one that I probably still should go back and take a look at. But I'm apathetic because they're two teams we've already played, so they're not on our future schedule. But it does blow me away.
Yeah. It was pretty crazy. Illinois was up 27-3 midway through the third quarter, and then Purdue started making a comeback.
Yeah.
But even with that comeback, they were still down by 12 points. Illinois was up 40-28 with 5 minutes left to go in the game. Illinois, I think they got a field goal. Purdue, okay, that must be the game. That was the game with the onside kick, because I remember Purdue scored and then they went for this strange onside kick when it wasn't yet, the very end of the game or whatever. And they got the ball again and then they scored again. I think that's what it was. So Purdue went up, but then Illinois had 46 seconds left, managed to make enough of a drive to get a field goal to tie the game, then go into overtime. And even though Purdue had made two 2-point conversions earlier in the game, they went for one in overtime, basically a win or lose the game scenario, and they didn't get it this time. And so they lost by 1 point.
Gotcha. Wow. That's just a crazy game. And I tell you, Illinois, they're putting together a very interesting game or interesting season. Now, I feel like Illinois, they play Michigan this week? That's the game I was thinking of.
Yeah, I mentioned that before the podcast, Dad.
Oh, okay. That's a big game.
Yes, it is. They both teams combined for over about 1,100 combined yards of offense. So yeah, that was just a no defense type of game.
Right. That's just wild. And I don't know what that says to Purdue, right? Like, is that means for optimism? I think that's the way you got to angle it if you're Purdue University.
Right.
But and if you're Illinois, it's like, what happened to our defense?
Right. They were up by so much. They were in total control of the game and up to the third quarter. And then also in the Big 12, a pretty big upset. Arizona State beat number 16 ranked Utah 27-19. That was a home game for Arizona State. Obviously their fans were going pretty crazy. So that's a big win for them.
That is a huge win. And one I wasn't expecting. I don't know. Utah has had some questionable things happen this year that I would have not guessed going into the season. And Arizona State is certainly playing at a higher level. It's interesting to see how Arizona State in this, switching conferences is coming into this Big 12 and looking pretty good. I kind of get excited about it because maybe I'll go watch one of those games later this year. Since it's going to be in Tempe, maybe one of those November games, I'll sneak over and go attend it.
Yay, there you go. And then talking about upcoming Nebraska opponents, I felt we had to highlight these two games. Wisconsin thrashed Rutgers 42-7, while Iowa beat Washington 40-16.
Yeah, and they both looked really good doing it. I mean, really good. Like they have found their strides on offense, and defensively, of course, they were very good. So yeah, that does not lend confidence to me about the second half of Nebraska's schedule. And it's frustrating to me that Rutgers would play that poorly. I spent quite a bit of time watching that game. I don't know how much of that you watched, but and I know the announcers kept talking about all the players that Rutgers was playing without. So I don't know if we ended up injuring some more guys. They had a few guys out when we played them. Rutgers, I'm talking about,
Right.
and it sounded like about half their defense, literally like 6 starters weren't playing, and you just can't do that in a Big Ten conference game and expect to be competitive when you got that many guys out.
Right. I think I saw a stat that the teams we played so far are 1-5 in the week after they play us. So either that means that we are being physical and beating them up, or that we're just been playing against pretty bad competition so far.
Well, I actually think that it's probably a combination of both, but I do think that the physicality thing is definitely a factor. I think we are a physical, especially defense. I think we're a physical defense.
Right. I did not really watch that game, but I did watch the highlights of that Iowa Washington game because I was curious how they did that. And it, not unsurprisingly, it was a case where Washington, I think, outyarded them, but they had two critical interceptions they threw. They gave up a pretty big punt return. They had a blocked field goal that Iowa blocked earlier in the game. Though I will say that it was
Yeah,
actually 40-9 pretty late in the game, and then Washington kind of scored a TD at the end when the game was already decided. So yeah, it was definitely an impressive performance from Iowa.
it was, and I mean it's just classic. This is what we do. That was a classic Iowa football game, and then they really started gaining momentum because that offensive line started moving some people around, and that running game got going, and it was like Katie bar to the door, man.
Oh, I guess I will mention real quick. Vanderbilt beat Kentucky 20-13. So Vanderbilt's on quite a good streak here, beating Alabama and Kentucky.
Yeah. Well, and they proved that the Alabama victory wasn't some, crazy off the wall success. They followed it up with another great execution and they beat a quality defense in Kentucky.
Right. Um, then in week 8 of college football, like you mentioned, Michigan is playing against Illinois. That's a home game for Illinois. And we've also got Oregon versus Iowa, both teams coming off of big wins.
Right. And it'll be interesting to see how they respond, especially Oregon. I'm particularly curious to see if Oregon can come into, Kinnick Stadium in Iowa and having had to do the cross country trek following what was likely a very celebratory post game, weekend, and then play a team that by design is going to try to muscle you and dumb you down and get just really in the mud dirty with you and see what happens. And Oregon's a team that I think is susceptible to getting frustrated by a team like Iowa. Now, that all falls apart for Iowa if Oregon's athletes, which they had plenty of, when you're watching that Ohio State Iowa game this past week and you're seeing these Oregon running backs and receivers literally run away from Ohio State athletes, they got some real speed. Oregon's speed is just crazy, and so that might come to haunt Iowa. And if they can't contain them, then and they get a lead, then Iowa's plan won't work.
Right. The really big games next week are both in the SEC. We've got number one Texas playing against Georgia. That is a home game for Texas, and Georgia did win in their game this past week. It wasn't a super big game. I feel like after you just beat, your big rival Oklahoma, and now you're coming to a home game against, a talented Georgia team, but also a team that, Alabama was thrashing until they started making their comeback. So I feel like you got to feel pretty good about that if you're Texas.
Yeah, I would agree. You got to feel good about it, but again, we'll see. I mean, I man, I don't know. I just don't know. But that's going to be a one I really want to watch.
Yeah. Well, what's your score prediction for that one?
Oh gosh, you're going to make me choose a score. I'm going to say Georgia's going to win.
Oh, interesting.
I am. I'm going to say Georgia's going to win. They're going to surprise Texas. Again, the Ewers is going to be the quarterback for Texas. and I'm gonna say Georgia's gonna find a way to make things interesting for Texas. I guess I the only hesitation I have on that is it's Sarkisian. He was at Alabama. He knows what Georgia's like. He was probably on the staff when he might have even been like in his first year on Alabama's staff when Georgia's coach was still at Alabama. What's his name? I can't think of it right at the moment. But that's an interesting dynamic I didn't think of till just now. But I just think Georgia's going to rise to the occasion and really put the screws to Texas's offense, and then Georgia's going to try to play smash mouth football with Texas and see if it works. So if that were to happen, then the I guess the score prediction needs to be it's going to be somewhat lower scoring, even though that hasn't necessarily been the trend. And I'm going to say it's going to be 24 Georgia to 17 Texas.
Interesting. You were thinking of Kirby Smart earlier, right?
Yes, Kirby. That's the guy I was thinking of. As I think about it, I'm probably regretting my prediction right now because of Sarkisian's background and expertise in dealing with Kirby Smart defenses.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I'm going to go Texas's way. I thought that Oklahoma game was going to be pretty close, knowing that it's a rivalry game. I thought Oklahoma might, kind of step up to the challenge, but Texas really dominated them pretty strongly. And having seen what happened with Alabama, I think that if Texas does go up big, say in the first half, I think they will know from experience, like, okay, we can't put our foot off the gas. Let's not just go into a running game, run the clock kind of mode. We got to keep our boot on their throat and try to, force the game out of their hands. So I'm going to predict that Texas does win that one. And I'll say it's 35 Texas to 21 Georgia.
35-21. Okay. That's probably probably a better guess than mine.
And then Tennessee, who you're just talking about earlier, coming off the narrow win over Florida, now they have to go play Alabama. It is at home for Tennessee. Both teams coming off of close wins. So I don't know, since Alabama has struggled against both South Carolina. Well, they've struggled against Georgia, Vanderbilt, and South Carolina all in a row. I can't really say with confidence that they're going to win this one.
I know. And you're saying this one is at Alabama, so it's another home game for them.
No, it's at Tennessee.
It's at Tennessee? Oh, okay. See, I think that home field matters in this matchup just because of all the things that have happened. But I just wish that Tennessee was playing better football. I'm going to say Alabama's going to win. They're going to have to outscore them, so it's going to end up being a high-scoring game. I'm going to say it's going to be 48-42 Alabama.
Okay. Well, I'll go a little differently. I'll say it's a little lower scoring game and that Tennessee, with the home crowd, manages to get a very close win over Alabama. Let's say that Tennessee wins 27 Tennessee to 24 Alabama.
Again, that's a better score prediction than mine.
Yeah.
I'm swinging for some unexpecteds here.
Right. Well, I will say, just from watching Alabama, these past few weeks, their quarterback, Jalen Milroe, right, who's a young quarterback, he's definitely very talented. He can throw it deep. He can run it pretty well, too. I can see why they are picking him, especially since he is young. He can develop and grow over time. But he has also made some mistakes. Like I mentioned, he threw some interceptions in that South Carolina game. And so I think how Tennessee is able to kind of rattle him will be a big factor.
I think you're right about that. The question is, offense really hasn't necessarily been Alabama's problem. Their bigger problem has been defense.
Right.
So that's where I'm thinking okay, if Alabama wins this game, it's going to be high scoring because I think it's going to have to be a shootout for Alabama to win it. I think if it gets into a slugfest, then maybe Tennessee gets the better of those, if that makes any sense.
No, yeah, I get what you're saying there. Um, so yeah, another exciting week of college football coming up. There have been a lot of good games recently, a lot for us to enjoy. Real quick before we talk about Nebraska football, we want to do a quick mention of the Nebraska volleyball team. They're currently 16-1, so they've not lost since our last podcast, and they had a close win over number 10 ranked Purdue. Went to 3-2, went to a fifth set. So now I believe the Nebraska girls are the number 2 ranked team in the country.
Yes, they are. But they had a challenge this week. They had been it felt like steady improvement. They had been really good at the service line. They'd been kind of cleaning up some of the issues that they were having, but they were still struggling in certain areas. And then they end up having to play this big top 10 matchup with Purdue, and they withstand basically Purdue's best game of the year, where their outside hitters just go off against us, and we are really struggling to be able to block them. Our block was just out of sync and was not covering well, and it ended up going to a 5-game instant classic kind of thing, and we end up pulling it out in extra points in the fifth set, and but it wasn't a great showing by Nebraska, and we passed the ball really well, but that did not translate to good offense for us, or at least not good enough, except to get 2 points better in that fifth set. So thank God we got the win, but clearly exposed some other weaknesses that Nebraska's going to have to. If I was predicting, here's a hot take, Alex. If I was predicting, I would say that right now Nebraska is probably somewhere between the third or fourth best team in the Big Ten. I know they're ranked 2 nationally, and of course they're still undefeated in the Big Ten. But right now, if Nebraska doesn't improve significantly on offense and get their blocking to where it's more consistent, I think Wisconsin's probably going to beat us twice this year. We play Penn State once in Lincoln at the end of the year. That one will be a toss-up and might very well be a Penn State victory based on how they've performed up to this point. And then I think another team or two, Oregon, I think we have to go out there and play Oregon at Oregon, and that's going to be a tough matchup. So Nebraska's got some serious issues that they have to address and get better. And I'm just not sure they're going to find the solutions that they need to find during this conference season. Hopefully they maybe find them, and then we can make a run in the tournament. But as far as Big Ten conference goes, I just don't see us being the one that can get through the gauntlet. I feel like Wisconsin has found itself and is likely going to be the big dog again, which irritates the heck out of me. And then the other thing that's really significant about volleyball is that the number 1 ranked team in the country played SMU, which is the only team that's beat us. They played them twice this week, once at home at Pitt and once at SMU. And when they played them at Pitt, they crushed them. It wasn't even close. But then later that week, they played again at SMU, and SU beat them in 5 for their first loss of the season. So Pitt lost this week, but retained the number 1 ranking, which is, I think, appropriate given how questionable Nebraska's looked and how dominant Pitt has looked, except for this one match. And even in this match, it was one of those deals where one of their best players just had a really bad match, but they had just beaten them, really handed them, crushed them just 4 or 5 days prior. So I think they had already made their point that they were a way better team than SMU. But it just kind of goes to show you that you got to show up to play every darn game, because it doesn't matter. Somebody can be the 4th, 5th, 6th, 10th best team in the conference, and you know what? On any given night, there's enough talent on that team that if you don't have your A game, you might very well lose.
Right. Well, and also it doesn't hurt that it makes our lost SMU look better, right? If they've also beaten the number 1 team in the country.
Oh, absolutely. But it's just interesting because usually when the number one team loses and the number two team doesn't, and the number two team beats a top 10 ranked opponent, that would lend itself to Nebraska being number one. It didn't happen. And that doesn't bother me at all. I'm actually kind of happy that the number one moniker is still sitting on Pitt's shoulders and not ours.
Right. So now switching to the football program. Obviously, we've got this big game against Indiana, which we talked about a bit last week. It is the big noon kickoff game. Nebraska is currently ranked 25th in the coaches poll. Well, I believe Indiana is ranked 16th in the AP poll. The betting odds are in Indiana's favor. I've seen it anywhere from 3.5 points to 6.5 points in their favor. And it's an interesting one because when you look at the stats, I think they beat us on most stats, but the key difference between our two teams, I suppose, is that Indiana has not played anyone of real significance. They've beaten UCLA, Maryland, and Northwestern, whereas obviously we've had our own kind of lesser opponents like Rutgers and Purdue, but then we also beat Colorado, right, who is a 4-2 team, and or maybe 5-2. I forget which. But they're doing well in the Big 12, right? And we managed to beat them. So we are definitely the toughest team that Indiana has played so far this season, but it is a home game for Indiana. So it is a tough one.
Very tough. I mean, this is a team that's top 10 in the nation in both offense and defense. Okay. Every part of their team is performing at a high level. They haven't had the combination of breakdowns like we've seen our team have, especially in areas like special teams and with penalties and things like that. They've been a fairly low penalized team. They appear to have a couple of really good running backs who are we're going to be right into the same thick of things like we were a couple of weeks ago against Illinois, where we're going to be facing two guys that are pretty large running backs, guys that are not easy to tackle by yourself, right? And we're going to have the discipline to tackle these guys and not let them get those yards after contact. And then they also have some excellent wide receivers because their quarterback had just been playing lights out. Their quarterback, by the way, O'Rourke, I think his name, or just Rourke, who is a transfer from your alma mater, Ohio U. I can't imagine what Ohio U would be doing right now if they had been able to retain this talent, because he is playing lights out football. And like an absolute veteran that's been around the Big Ten forever, he does not have any indications that the moment is too big for him. He has played lights out football.
Interesting. I didn't know he was from Ohio University. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But you were talking about Bill Bush in recent weeks, a former assistant of Nebraska's who has a specialization with special teams. And I saw an interview with him recently where he was asked basically about how he thinks Nebraska season's going to go, how we should improve on special teams, since that's clearly an issue for us. And what he said about special teams was his approach would be basically to, reset, think we're back to week one basically, and just start kind of retraining things from the ground up, just kind of get people to not think about the past and just think with a clean slate. And he was optimistic that we would see some serious improvement in special teams because we've had this bye week and we've had the extra time to practice. He was actually predicting that we'll be 9-3 this year, thinking we'll beat Indiana, we'll lose to Ohio State, might lose to USC, and then beat everybody else, which I thought was very optimistic.
Yeah. I think that's just that's Bill is the eternal optimist, right? So, but he's visualizing the best case scenario where he sees us making improvements in all those areas that we would define as weaknesses, and then not faltering in other areas. And then you have to also take into account that the other teams get better too, right? Like the other teams are improving as the season progresses as well. But this is a tough stretch. This next 3 games, right? We have We have 2 away games and then a home game, and then we have another bye week. So this group of 3 games before our next bye are huge, because if we could win that Indiana game this coming weekend, that would put us on a path to possibly go 2-1 in this 3 game stretch. And if we could go 2-1 in this stretch, then not only does that mean we're bowl eligible, but then that maybe gives you a different perspective on what the final 3 games are going to look like.
True. And I forget my exact prediction before the season, but I want to say it was like 7-5. So if we could go 2-1 in this next stretch, like you say, we'd be 7-2 then going into our final 3 games,
Right.
with a chance to go beyond what I predicted before the season. So that would be very good. UCLA lost to Minnesota this past week, so they're continuing to struggle. They are definitely a team that is beatable for us, I think. And Ohio State's pretty much a guaranteed loss. So this Indiana game is the one that's the most up in the air. And it kind of starts off this stretch. It's us coming off a bye. It's them coming off a bye. So it's very crucial. And Bill Bush, I remember in that interview, he mentioned how he would, if he had to take the roster of talent between us and Indiana, he would take Nebraska. He thinks we have more talent, but I think the key is probably that Indiana is executing as a team better on their game plan than Nebraska has been recently. So unless we have been able to fix that with the bye week and the extra practice time, I think we're probably going to lose this game.
Right. Well, see, that's the thing, is that we have yet to put 60 minutes of good football as a team together. Not once. You remember, I have repeated this mantra many times on our podcast over these years, Alex, about the fact that you have 3 phases of the football team, and I would love for us to see some games, especially, and I don't just mean one, but a series of games where we play well, not the best game ever, but well in all 3 phases of the game. And if you can do that, then you know what? Some of those victories that are pretty close become successful, become easier, right? And it just blows me away how we don't do that, because I grew up, Alex, as a young man, watching football in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and very rarely did we not play well in all 3 phases of the game. I mean, it was a bone of contention. It was a serious discussion if we didn't. And Now it's so rare that it's like we just can't even get our hands around it. Where Indiana appears to have done that. I mean, they're number one in Big Ten in offense, and they throw it for 315 yards and rush for 200 yards every game. Their defense is absolutely phenomenal, and so uh, um, you know it's just crazy. They're holding their opponents to 14 points, and they're playing, and they're scoring 47. So they're just every area of statistics, they are way out there, man, and they just aren't making many mistakes in any phase.
Right, which is scary for sure. But what do you put then on the fact that we are the toughest opponent, certainly that they have faced, and like that our defense will give them more trouble than any team they've played so far?
Right. Well, see, and that's the thing, is that I think that is true, that Nebraska is, or has probably a defense that's more stout than any team that Indiana up to this point has played. But again, it gets back to that confidence factor, right? That ability. Their defense is not no slouch. Their defense is, it appears, is number one, 255 yards per game versus our 272. So even on the defensive side, their defense statistically is 20 yards better than ours. So even in that area, you can't immediately say, oh well, we're gonna do a lot more than them. They're just an offensive juggernaut. No, they're a pretty complete football team. So it scares me that we would have to play a complete game in a way that we haven't all season. But I totally agree with Bill Bush that I think if you look at the talent of our top, 60 players, let's say, the ones that are going to be in the two deep and a few other key personnel, that top 60 for Nebraska is better than the top 60 at Indiana. And maybe they've never been hit in the mouth like they're going to be on Saturday. I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see. And how are we going to come out and play without the energy of our crowd? Keep in mind that we have had what we are 5-1. Let's see here, and we've had 5 home games out of the 6. Right, the only away game we've had is Purdue.
No, that's true. That's definitely true. And like you say, in the second half of our season, we've got tougher teams to play. We've got more away games. So there is more challenges for us on those fronts for sure. I was the one when we predicted the Rutgers game. I predicted that we would win pretty solidly, and you predicted that we would lose. And obviously, it was a W, but it was an ugly W. And that has me concerned going into this Indiana game, like you say, with all the momentum they have. I've already seen that like the game is sold out in terms of tickets, right? It's the biggest game they've had in that stadium in decades, probably. So, their fans are going to be fired up. If they go up early, it could really kind of snowball, I think. So it's probably important that we get points on the board early in the first quarter. So I'm going to have to be the realist this time, and I'm going to go ahead and say that we lose. We keep it competitive. We don't get like blown out, but that we lose. Let's say 27 Indiana to 21 Nebraska.
Interesting. So here's my thing. I just ranted on all the reasons why Indiana is so darn good, and it's a big noon game, right, Alex? So all the media is going to be there. The whole Big Ten game day crew, if you will, is going to be there. And Indiana fans, I mean, we're going into a lion's den, right? That's what's going to happen. But I have an unusual confidence that we can hang with these guys, that we are going to hit them in the mouth in a way that they haven't been hit in the mouth yet this year, and that our offense, I really hope that our offensive game plan is to be the more physical team, not just on defense, but on offense, and that we're going to establish a running game that we haven't established up till now. And that established running game is going to help us really keep ourselves balanced. And all of a sudden, things are going to open up in our passing game with Dylan because of that. So I'm going to predict that Nebraska's going to win. It's going to take some points, though. I think Nebraska's going to have to score 35 points to win this game. So I'm going to say Nebraska wins 35-28.
Okay, so we're both in agreement. It'll be a one-score game. We're just disagreeing on the direction it'll go.
Right.
Well, I was going to say, given our history of one-score games in recent years, I think the winds are blowing in my favor there.
You're right. You're absolutely right, Alex. And I don't know why I'm saying this, but it's just wishful thinking. All those kinds of things are certainly playing into it. But I just really feel like we're due. We're ready. Something's going to happen. It's going to click. And maybe it's just because I watched the latest version of Chasing 3 this week, and I love so much about what Matt Rule is doing. And I listened to his press conference today, and he just was so insightful and so clearly connected with how the team is and what the team needs and things like that. And he's optimistic that he's looking forward to seeing how the special teams improves. And he made some comments, I think, that hint that he's going to maybe be a little more aggressive with his game planning and decision making going forward. And I just feel like our running game has been so close, and if we could kind of solidify that, then we become a juggernaut on offense that we haven't seen yet this year. And if we can do that against an Illinois team that is very good and very sound, but maybe doesn't have the the playmakers that we do, then maybe we could pull it off, But
Right.
I could just getting blown out, just getting absolutely blown out of the stadium because things don't go well for us early and then we unravel, because we've seen that obviously before, and we again are, no, can we walk into an Indiana team that's struggling and it's, maybe doesn't have the full support of their fan base and all that? No, 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 no. We have to get them when they're on the highest high and have had 2 weeks to prepare. you know I mean, we get them at the worst possible times to get them, but that's just the way it goes, so we're going to go out there and play.
Yep. Should be mentioned it's Indiana, not Illinois. You mentioned that earlier.
Did I say Illinois? I meant Indiana, obviously. Yes.
Yes. Yep. Well, and like you say, it's at a critical kind of point in our season. If we win this, we'll get to 6 wins. We're guaranteed to go to a bowl game for the first time in years, which would obviously be big for us. And it'd be a victory over a top 20 team that's obviously considered to be very good, as you point out with all those stats. So then that gives you a little bit of confidence going into Ohio State, even though we will still be the big underdog. But it gives you the confidence that, in that game we could play more freely, right? Like, we've got no expectations of winning that one. So if we can surprise them in some, miraculous way early on, or they make some mistakes, then maybe we could be the ones being Vanderbilt this season.
Oh, you're absolutely right, Alex. I think this game is huge now, because where are we? We're 5-1. The 1 doesn't matter so much right now. It's the 5 that matters, right? And if we could find a way to win this game and get the 6 wins, the burden off the shoulders of our athletes, I think, could free them to just go to another level of performance. Because I really feel like our entire football program is carrying around this massive 2 million pound boulder on their back, that is, we can't get to a bowl game. And so if we could get this victory and get that check mark done, then the rest of the season is, let's go play for us, and it's just a matter of figuring out what bowl game we're going to go to. And man, would that free up a lot of pressure.
Yep, that would be great. So we'll be back, of course, next week to talk about the results of that game. Hopefully a big W for Nebraska, as well as the other big games going on that week. So we'll talk to everyone then. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can reach us at huskerpete13@gmail.com. You can also find us if you search for College Football Throwdown on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can leave us a rating or review there. We always love hearing feedback from the fans. So thank you all out there for listening, and thank you, Dad, for joining me for this episode. And until next time, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.